Chapter 1. A Hard Beginning. My name is Maggie. Since childhood, I lived between my mother's anger and my brother's fights. I did not learn songs or laughter first. I learned silence. Every day in my house was filled with noise. My mother shouted, my brother Jimmy fought, and I stayed quiet. I was only a little girl, but I felt the heavy weight of sadness around me. My mother's voice was always harsh. She scolded me for small mistakes and cursed Jimmy when he came home with dirty clothes. Sometimes she threw things on the floor when she was angry. I often wished she would smile, but her face carried only bitterness. When she looked at me, her eyes told me that she had no hope. I wanted her love, but I received only her anger. Jimmy was different from me. He was never afraid to answer back. He fought with boys in the street almost every day. I saw him come home with scratches on his arms and blood on his lip. He laughed about it, as if fighting was a game. Once, when Mother shouted, "You will bring shame to us all," Jimmy wiped his mouth and replied, "Better to fight than to sit and cry." His words cut me like a knife, because I did not know how to fight or how to answer. I only knew how to stay silent. I remember nights when the house was dark, and my mother shouted so loudly that neighbors came to their windows. I sat in the corner, holding my knees, wishing the shouting would end. My heart beat fast, and I thought, why must life be like this? Why can't we live in peace? I wanted kindness even for one day. But in that house, kindness never lasted. Sometimes I tried to be helpful. I washed a plate or picked up Jimmy's clothes, hoping my mother would notice and say something soft. But instead she shouted again, "You call this work? You are useless." Her words made me want to cry, but I held my tears inside. Tears were dangerous in my house. They only brought more shouting. One afternoon I watched Jimmy fighting outside. Two bigger boys pushed him, but he shed back harder. He swung his fists and shouted. Mother rushed out, screaming at everyone. People laughed from their windows. I stood at the door, my face burning with shame. I wished I could pull Jimmy away, but he lived for his fights, and I lived for my silence. I did not know my father well. He was gone early from my life. Mother only spoke of him with anger. She said he left us nothing but pain. I stopped asking about him, though in my heart I wished he had stayed. Maybe he would have protected me. Maybe he would have given me a kind word. In my heart, I dreamed of a better world. At school, I sometimes saw girls with clean dresses and happy faces. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to laugh without fear. But my school days were short. Mother said, "School will not feed you. Work will." I lowered my head and obeyed. I had no power to argue. Even with all the pain, I held on to hope. I told myself, someday things will change. Someday I will find a way out of this noise. My dreams were small, but they kept me alive. I dreamed of a quiet home, a gentle hand, and words that did not hurt. That was my beginning. My mother's anger was the sky over me. My brother's fights were the ground under me, and I was caught in between. My name is Maggie, and silence was the first thing I ever learned. Chapter 2. Maggie dreams of a better life. I often sat alone and thought about my future. My life at home was full of anger and noise, but inside me there was a small light of hope. I dreamed of another kind of life. I told myself, I will not always be here. One day I will walk out of this place and find peace. These thoughts were my secret treasure. They were the only thing that gave me strength. When I saw other girls in better clothes, I felt a strong pull in my heart. Their dresses were clean, their shoes were not torn, and they laughed together with bright faces. I whispered to myself, maybe one day I will also wear a dress like that. Maybe I will also smile like them. I wanted to rise above my world of shouting and fighting. Jimmy laughed at my dreams. Once he saw me staring at a shop window where small toys and ribbons were kept. He said, "Why are you wasting your eyes there? We will never have such things." His words were sharp, but I held my silence. I thought, "You do not understand me, Jimmy. You fight for today. I dream for tomorrow." Sometimes Mother spoke about work. She said, "You are old enough to earn. Don't waste time with silly thoughts." I nodded and answered softly, "Yes, Mother." But inside I wanted more than just work. I wanted a life where my worth was not measured by anger or blows. I wanted kindness. At night, I looked at the ceiling and built castles in my mind. In my dreams, I walked through quiet streets where no one shouted at me. I sat in a home where gentle voices spoke to me with care. In that world, I was not Maggie the poor girl. I was simply Maggie, a person who could be loved. There were moments when my heart spoke louder than my fear. Once I whispered to myself, "I will not always be here. I will find something better." The words gave me courage. They felt like a promise to my own soul. I was not strong like Jimmy with fists, but I was strong with hope. One evening, I tried to share my dream with Mother. I said, "Maybe life can be different. Maybe we can all be happy one day." She stared at me with cold eyes and shouted, "Stop your nonsense! Our life will never change." Her words fell heavy on me, but I did not let my hope die. I thought, she cannot see what I see. She cannot dream like I dream. At times I wondered if anyone in the world would ever believe in me. Would anyone look at me and say, "You are not useless. You are special"? The thought made my chest ache. Still, I held my hope. Even if the whole world said no, inside I wanted to say yes. My life was hard, but my dreams were soft. They were my secret garden where no one could enter. I watered them with my silent wishes. Every insult from Mother, every laugh from Jimmy, every lonely night. These things only made me protect my dreams more strongly. I was Maggie, a girl in a house of anger. But in my heart, I was also Maggie, a girl who dreamed of light. And though my feet were still in the dust, my eyes were fixed on something higher. Chapter 3. The Meeting with Pete. My dreams gave me a little courage. I began to believe that life could change, even if the world around me said it could not. Then one evening, Jimmy came home with a friend. His name was Pete. That night was the first step into a new part of my life. Jimmy walked in with Pete after a fight on the street. Both of them laughed as if nothing could hurt them. Jimmy said proudly, "This is Pete. He doesn't fear anyone." Pete slapped Jimmy on the shoulder and laughed again. His voice filled the room with ease. I sat quietly, but I watched him. Pete looked stronger, braver, and more confident than the boys I had seen before. His clothes were cleaner, his words were bold. My mother shouted at Jimmy, angry as always, but Pete did not care. He said, "Let her shout. That's how mothers show love." His calm tone shocked me. In our house, love never sounded like that. Then Pete's eyes found me. "So you're Jimmy's sister?" he asked. Jimmy answered quickly, "She's Maggie. She never talks much." Pete smiled at me and said kindly, "Nice to meet you, Maggie." Those words touched me in a way I could not explain. I was used to harsh voices, but his voice was soft and friendly. I lowered my eyes and whispered, "Hello." My voice was weak, but he heard it. Pete leaned forward slightly and said, "Don't hide your voice. A girl should never be afraid to speak." My cheeks grew hot, and I felt something stir inside me. Nobody had ever spoken to me like that. From that day, Pete began to visit often. He and Jimmy talked for hours about street fights, small jobs, and big plans. I sat silently nearby, but sometimes Pete turned toward me. Once he asked, "Do you help your mother much, Maggie?" I nodded shyly. Another time he asked, "Do you read?" I whispered, "Only a little." My answers were short, but in my heart I was happy. It was new for me to be noticed. One night, when Jimmy stepped outside for a while, Pete spoke directly to me. He looked into my yes and said, "You are not like the others here. You are quiet, but I can see strength in you." His words entered my heart like a secret light. I had never been called strong before. For a moment, I believed I was more than the silent girl in the corner. When Jimmy came back, he laughed at Pete's words. "Don't waste time talking to her," he said. "She's just my little sister." Pete smiled and replied, "I don't waste time. I speak what I see." His voice was steady, and his eyes returned to me. I felt my heart race. After that, I thought of Pete even when he was not there. His laugh stayed in my ears. His words about strength repeated in my mind. Nobody in my family ever gave me hope, but Pete made me feel as if I had some hidden worth. I began to wonder if maybe he was the path toward the better life I had always dreamed of. That was the start of it all. Pete entered my world through my brother's laughter, but he stayed in my thoughts because he saw me when no one else did. And from that day, my quiet dreams began to take a new shape. Chapter 4. Maggie and Pete Together. After Pete entered my life, my thoughts began to change. I used to dream of a better world, but now my dreams had a face and a voice. I thought of Pete when I washed dishes, when I cleaned the floor, and even when I tried to sleep at night. His laughter stayed in my ears. His words, "You are strong," repeated again and again inside me. For the first time in my life, I wanted to believe that maybe someone truly saw me. Pete visited often with Jimmy, but slowly his attention came more to me. Sometimes, While Jimmy talked about fights or money, Pete would look across the room at me. His eyes told me, "I notice you." I tried to keep my head low, but my heart beat faster each time. One evening, Jimmy went out for a while, leaving me alone in the room with Pete. The silence was heavy at first. I sat with my hands in my lap. Then Pete said, "Why do you always stay so quiet, Maggie? You should talk more." I answered softly, "No one listens when I speak." Pete leaned forward and said, "I will listen." Those words made me lift my eyes. For the first time, I felt that my voice mattered. We began to talk a little more after that day. At first, my sentences were short. Pete asked me what I liked, what I wanted in life. I told him, "I want peace. I want a place where people are kind." He smiled and said, "You will have it. You're too good to stay hidden in this life forever." His words gave me a hope I had never known. After a few weeks, Pete invited me outside. "Let's go for a walk," he said. I was nervous, but I went. We walked down the street, and he told me stories about his work and his plans. He spoke with such confidence, as if he could take the world in his hands. I listened quietly, but I felt safe beside him. Nobody had ever walked with me like that before. One night he took me to a small place where music played. The sound was soft, and people laughed together. I sat quietly, feeling as if I had stepped into another world. Pete looked at me and said, "See, Maggie, life can be different. You deserve this." My heart filled with wonder. For the first time, I felt I was not only Maggie, the poor girl. I was someone who could belong in a brighter place. At home, things were still the same. My mother shouted and Jimmy fought. But in my mind, I held on to Pete's voice. When Mother said, "You are useless," I remembered Pete's words, "You are strong." When Jimmy laughed at me, I remembered Pete's smile that told me I was worth something. I knew I was changing. I no longer felt only like the silent girl in the corner. I felt like someone who could step into a new life. And all of this was because of Pete. That was how we began to spend more time together. He became a part of my days and my nights, in my thoughts and in my heart. I had once dreamed of light, and now it seemed the light was walking beside me. Chapter 5. Trouble at Home. At first, I tried to keep my meetings with Pete as quiet as I could. I knew how my mother and Jimmy thought. They lived in a world of shouting and fists, not in a world of gentle words. Still, Pete made me feel strong. He made me believe I had worth. I wanted to hold on to that feeling. But it was not long before my family began to notice. One evening, Mother saw me come home later than usual. She stared at me with angry eyes and shouted, "Where were you? Who were you with?" My hands shook as I answered, "I was walking with Pete." The room grew silent for a moment, then her voice rose like fire. "You bring shame to this house. No girl of mine will wander with men." Her words cut deep. I tried to speak. "Mother, he is Jimmy's friend. He is kind to me." But she would not listen. She shouted again and again until I had no strength left to answer. Jimmy was no better. He laughed when he heard about Pete and me. "So, you think he cares for you?" he said coldly. "Pete is not the kind to stay with one girl. He will leave you soon enough." His words filled me with fear, but I held on to the small hope Pete had given me. I thought, he sees me differently. He believes in me. He will not be like the others. The days that followed grew harder. Mother watched me with suspicion. Whenever I left the house, she demanded, "Are you going to meet him again?" If I answered yes, she cursed me. If I stayed silent, she cursed me more. Jimmy avoided me most of the time, but when he spoke, his words were sharp. "You're blind, Maggie. Pete talks big, but you don't know him like I do. Still, I could not stay away." Pete continued to meet me, and each time he spoke, I felt lighter. "Don't let them crush you," he told me one night. "You're better than all this shouting." I whispered, "But they are my family." Pete shook his head and said, "Family should lift you, not drag you down. You deserve more." His words gave me comfort, yet they also brought guilt. I want Ed to believe him, but part of me wished my family could change and accept me. One night, Mother's anger reached its height. She had been drinking, and her face was red. She shouted so loudly the neighbors could hear, "You have ruined yourself, Maggie! You bring shame on us all!" Her voice cracked with rage. I tried to answer, "Mother, I only want a better life." But she raised her hand and pointed to the door. "Get out if you want to follow him. You are no daughter of mine." My heart pounded. I did not move, but the words stayed inside me like a heavy stone. Jimmy, standing nearby, spoke coldly. "She is right, Maggie. You are making a fool of yourself. Stop before it is too late." I looked at him with pleading eyes and said, "Can't you see, Jimmy? Pete is the only one who believes in me." But Jimmy only shook his head. "Believing in you is easy. Staying with you is harder. He will not stay." That night I lay in bed with tears on my face. I thought about Pete's smile and my mother's curses. I thought about Jimmy's warnings and my own small dreams. Inside me, two voices fought each other. One said, "Hold on to Pete. He is your hope." The other said, "What if they are right? What if you are only fooling yourself?" In the days that followed, the shouting did not stop. Mother spoke to me with bitterness, as if I had already destroyed my life. Jimmy avoided me more and more. Only Pete gave me comfort. When we walked together, he said, "Don't look so sad, Maggie. Let them say what they want. You are stronger than their anger." I nodded, but I felt torn. His words lifted me, yet the sound of my mother's voice still echoed in my head. The trouble at home grew like a storm. Every day the walls seemed to close around me. Every word from my family reminded me that I was unwanted. Yet every word from Pete reminded me that I was worth something. I did not know which world was stronger. But I knew one thing with certainty. Home was no longer a place of safety. It was a place of war. Chapter 6. Pete walks away. For some time, Pete was the only light in my life. He made me believe that I was more than the shouting of my mother and the cruel laughter of my brother. When we walked together, I felt as if I belonged to another world. But little by little, I began to notice a change in him. His voice was not the same. His eyes no longer stayed on me. The warmth I had once felt began to grow cold. At first, I told myself it was nothing. One evening, when I asked if we could walk, Pete said, "Not tonight, Maggie. I'm busy." I nodded, but in my heart I felt a sting. A few days later, I asked again. He smiled faintly and said, "Maybe tomorrow." That tomorrow never came. When we did meet, his laughter was louder than his words to me. He spoke of other people, other places, other women. I listened silently, but inside I asked myself, why doesn't he talk to me like before? Once I gathered courage and asked, "Do you still believe I am strong?" Pete looked away and said, "Sure, Maggie, but don't think too much. Life is short." His answer cut me like a blade. It was not the voice that had once lifted me. One night, I saw him sitting with another woman. She was dressed better than me, and she laughed at every word he spoke. I froze in the street, watching from a distance. My heart felt heavy, but my feet would not move. When Pete noticed me, he only nodded as if nothing was wrong. Later, when I asked him, "Who was she?" he replied carelessly, "Just a friend." I wanted to believe him, but his eyes told me otherwise. Days passed, and Pete came less often. Jimmy saw it too and mocked me. "I told you he wouldn't stay," he said with a cruel smile. "You believed his talk. Now see what's left." His words burned in my ears. Mother added to the pain by shouting, "You see? I warned you. Now you have nothing." Their voices pressed me down. But what hurt me most was Pete's silence. When I met him again, I begged softly, "Pete, what has changed? Did I do something wrong?" He sighed and said, "Maggie, you're a good girl, but I can't be tied down. I like to be free. Don't expect too much from me." I looked at him with tears in my eyes. "But you told me I was different. You told me I was strong." Pete shook his head. "I said what I felt then. Things are different now." And with those words, a part of me broke forever. After that night, he stopped coming to me. When I tried to see him, he always had a reason to stay away. Once he said, "I'm busy with work." Another time he said, "I'm with friends." Soon he stopped answering at all. The door that had once opened my dreams was now shut, and I stood outside with nothing but silence. At home, I could not hide my pain. My mother shouted at me with even greater anger. "Look at you now. Left behind like a fool. Didn't I say this would happen?" Jimmy looked at me with cold eyes and said, "You should have listened. You trusted the wrong man." Their words stabbed me, but I had no strength to fight back. I only lowered my head and carried the weight of my shame. Each night I lay awake, remembering the first time Pete had smiled at me. I replayed his words, "You are strong," but now they sounded empty. I asked myself again and again, was I blind? Was I foolish? Did I mistake his kindness for love? The answers never came, only more tears. In the quiet of my own heart, I felt myself falling apart. The hope that Pete had given me was gone. My dreams, which once had a face, now returned to shadows. I still wanted a better life, but the path I thought I had found was closing before my eyes. Pete had walked into my life with bold laughter, and now he walked away without looking back. And I, who had trusted him more than anyone, was left with nothing but a broken heart and a silence deeper than before. Chapter 7. No place to go. When Pete left me, I felt as if the ground under my feet had broken. I told myself that maybe he would return, maybe he would remember his words and come back. But days turned into weeks, and he never came. His silence grew louder than his voice. His absence was stronger than his presence. My dreams began to sink, and my heart carried a weight I could not bear alone. At first, I thought I could hide my pain, but my mother saw it. She looked at me with hard eyes and shouted, "See? I told you this would happen. That man has left you, and now you bring nothing but shame to this house." I tried to answer softly, "Mother, I only wanted a better life." But she raised her voice and said, "Better life? You are nothing but disgrace. You are not my daughter anymore." Her words cut deeper than any wound. I turned to Jimmy, hoping for one kind word, but his face was cold. He said, "I warned you, Maggie. I told you not to trust him. Now look at you. You thought you were different, but you were blind." I begged him, "Jimmy, you are my brother. Can't you stand with me?" He shook his head and said, "No, Maggie. You have chosen your path. Don't expect me to carry your shame." That night, I sat alone in my room, my heart breaking with every breath. I thought of leaving the house, but where would I go? The streets were full of strangers. I had no friends, no place to rest, no one to call my own. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alone in the world. The next day, when I tried to sit at the table, Mother shouted again, "Get out! You don't belong here anymore." Her voice was sharp and final. I said quietly, "Mother, I am still your daughter." She raised her hand and pointed to the door. "Not to me. Go find the man you trusted. Let him feed you now." Tears burned my eyes, but I knew Pete would not come. He had already turned his back. I left the table and went to Jimmy once more. "Brother, please listen. I only wanted to be seen, to be loved. Can't. You understand?" He looked at me with cold anger and said, "Stop asking. Nothing you say will change what has been done." His words fell like heavy stones, crushing the last bit of hope in me, so I walked out of the house, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. Every corner of that place reminded me I was unwanted. I stepped into the street with nothing but my tears. People who once knew me looked at me differently now. Their eyes were full of judgment. Some whispered, others pointed, and their silence was heavier than words. I tried to find comfort in my memories, but they brought me more pain. I remembered Pete's voice saying, You are strong. I remembered his smile that once made me believe I was worth something, but those words now sounded empty. That smile had turned away, and every memory felt like a knife cutting deeper. Days passed slowly, and I had nowhere to go. I wanted to return home, but each time I thought of Mother's voice and Jimmy's coldness, I stopped myself. I was not welcome there anymore. I wanted to believe someone, somewhere, would open their door for me. But when I looked around, all I saw were closed faces and turned backs. I walked alone, searching for a place where I could belong. But no place called me. No voice invited me. Everywhere I went, I felt the weight of rejection. I was Maggie, the girl who had hoped for light, now lost in shadows with no path ahead. That was how I learned the hardest truth of my life. When family closes its doors and love turns its back, there is no place to go. Chapter 8. The Sad End. When Pete walked away, I thought my heart could not break more than it already had. But life showed me that a broken heart can still keep breaking, piece by piece, until there is nothing left inside. I tried to live with the memory of his words, but those words soon lost their warmth. You are strong, he had once told me. Now I repeated them to myself, but they sounded hollow, as if spoken to someone else. Each day I carried myself like a shadow. I moved through the streets with no direction. People looked at me with cold eyes. Some laughed, others whispered. No one reached out a hand. I had once believed I could rise above my surroundings. Now I felt lower than I had ever been. I went back to my home one last time. I stood at the door, hoping for a little mercy. My mother saw me and her face twisted in anger. She shouted, "You again? Didn't I tell you to stay away? You are no child of mine." Her voice was louder than my heart could bear. I tried to whisper, "Mother, please, I have nowhere else." She pointed to the street and said, "Then stay there. You are dead to me." I looked past her at Jimmy. For one moment I thought he might defend me. He looked at me, but his eyes were cold. He said nothing. His silence was worse than any curse. It told me clearly. I was truly alone. I walked away with slow steps, and every step felt like a goodbye. After that, I had no roof, no safety, no one to lean on. I wandered during the day, and at night I searched for a quiet corner to rest. I tried to tell myself, "Be strong, Maggie." But strength had left me long ago. My body was tired, but my spirit was more tired than my body. I thought of the little girl I had once been, sitting quietly in a corner of the house, while Mother shouted and Jimmy fought. That little girl had believed in dreams. She had believed that kindness could exist. She had thought maybe life would open its arms one day. But that little girl had been wrong. The world had no arms for her. Oh my God, only closed doors. Sometimes I saw Pete from far away. He laughed with other people, with women who looked brighter, richer, happier than me. He walked past me once, and our eyes met for a second. I thought maybe he would stop. Maybe he would say my name. But he looked through me, as if I were nothing more than air. That was the moment I truly understood. He was gone forever, and so was my last piece of hope. Nights grew colder inside me, even if the air was warm. I talked to myself in whispers. Maggie, you are not made for this world. Tears became my food. Silence became my blanket. I had no strength left to fight the pain. I had no dream left to carry me. One evening, I sat alone near the edge of a dark street. I looked up at the sky and said softly, "If there is peace anywhere, let me find it now." I cannot walk any longer. My heart slowed. My eyes grew heavy. I thought, maybe if I sleep now, I will wake up where there is no shouting, no anger, no betrayal. And then, there was nothing. No noise, no pain, only silence. The same silence that had followed me all my life. Later, I heard that my mother wept when she learned of my death. She screamed at Jimmy, blaming him for not protecting me. "She was your sister," she shouted. Jimmy lowered his head, but said nothing. For the first time, guilt touched their hearts. But what use was their sorrow when I was already gone? Their tears could not bring me back. Their regret could not erase the cruelty they had shown me. I had wanted little in life. I had not asked for riches or glory. I had only wished for love, for peace, for gentle words. I wanted someone to look at me and say, "You are not nothing. You matter." Pete gave me that hope once, but he took it away. My mother and brother could have saved me, but they closed their hearts. So my story ended not with love, not with light, but with silence. The same silence that began with my childhood became my final companion. I was Maggie, the quiet girl who once dreamed of a better life. But the world gave me no place, no mercy, no peace. And so, in silence, I disappeared.